Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for today's news conference with the STS-130 crew. We'll start with introductions and then questions from the media at various NASA centers. I'd like to introduce Commander George Zamka. George was born in Jersey City, New Jersey, and raised in New York City, Irvington, New York, Medellin, Columbia, and Rochester Hills, Michigan. He holds degrees from the United States Naval Academy and Florida Institute of Technology. He was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the United States Marine Corps after graduating from the United States Naval Academy and is currently a colonel in the U.S. Marine Corps. George was selected as a NASA astronaut candidate in June 1998. His first spaceflight was STS-120 in October of 2007, where he served as a pilot for the 15-day-long mission to deliver the Node 2 Harmony module to the International Space Station. George?
Thank you, Nicole. Welcome to the STS-130 Crew Press Conference. We've got a great mission in front of us, and we're very anxious to get started. One thing that I want to get out of the way is that we have heard in vague terms about the activity in Washington regarding the budget. We have been focused on our mission, and any questions regarding that matter will be answered in that way. There's a space shuttle with 4 million pounds of propellant and an international payload strapped to it and thousands of bits of hardware to handle, all with our names on it at Pad 39A at the Cape. We've been preparing ourselves for this mission for a year, and arguably we've been preparing for it for most of our lives, and we get one chance to get it right. So if you can't understand that that has our total focus and attention, then we've not explained our situation as astronauts well to you. We are extremely fortunate to have been assigned to this mission. Flying in space is a dream for all of us, and the mission of bringing up Tranquility and the cupola up to the space station is an extra special prize that we are particularly humbled and grateful for. Thanks to all of the designers, planners, technicians, flight controllers, and trainers that have gotten the hardware and us this far. And it's near time for us to take the baton and achieve the moment that we have all been working for. We've got a few large themes for our mission: the attachment of Tranquility and the cupola, which will change the way astronauts live and work on the space station. We've got the supporting EVAs, which include the highly choreographed laying out and installing of the external ammonia lines and the moving of the regen eclipse racks from spaces throughout the station into Node 3. Each of these themes has its challenges and disciplines with which this crew have become familiar with and trained for in the last year. We're looking forward to seeing how our planning and preparation meets with the reality of the situation on orbit. I'd like to take one moment and thank the ammonia hose team for doing an especially great job in generating and testing some critical hoses for us in a very short amount of time. Those hoses are arguably the heart of this assembly mission, and without them, we'd be having a very different discussion today about what we were going to do and probably not even meeting with you today. That team went out of their way to allow us to verify the fidelity of our simulations in the neutral buoyancy laboratory so that we knew that when we were in space, those hoses would attach the way we expected them to. I'd like to introduce the crew to you, starting with our pilot, Colonel Terry Virts of the United States Air Force. Terry was born in Baltimore, Maryland, and grew up in nearby Columbia, where on cold, clear days, he may have heard the ringing of the chapel bell from the U.S. Naval Academy just down the road. So upon graduation from high school, he went across country to the Air Force Academy and graduated in 1989 with a degree in mathematics. He went on to fly F-16s for the Air Force all over the world. Terry is an extremely capable pilot, very smart and proactive, knows all the ins and outs of his side of the cockpit and his own tendencies. He also provides a little levity at almost all appropriate times, which helps us all get along on the way. On our flight, he'll be the lead space station arm operator responsible for moving Tranquility and the cupola to their final homes. Next is our Mission Specialist 1, Kay Heyer. Kay was born and raised in Mobile, Alabama, near the Naval Air Station in Pensacola, where all naval aviators get their start. Kay was one of the early women to enter the Naval Academy, and although she doesn't care to wear the mantle, she has quietly and successfully set a pattern for other young women to follow that want to serve their country in the Navy and want to fly. She is a captain in the Naval Reserves and has formidable organizational and recall skills. She's somewhat of a walking Rolodex, able to remember facts and details that most of us would just punt on, but that she has used to get us through many simulations and meetings in the last year. She is the primary shuttle arm operator on our flight and is our cupola specialist. Next to Kay is Steve Robinson, our MS-2. Steve was born in Sacramento, California, and was blessed with a curiosity and a willingness to learn that shows in the many adventures, experiences, and areas of expertise that he has. Name any town, and Steve has either pumped gas, fixed an airplane, run a software company, or raised a bear cub from infancy there. The cub part I made up. He has degrees from UC Davis and Sacramento. This will be his 4th space flight, and he has no apparent limit to the amount of detail that he can absorb about our mission. He makes a lot of spreadsheets. To offset this seemingly outsized left brain lobe, he is also a rock musician and plays a mean lead guitar in the astronaut band. On our flight, we are using Steve's spacewalking experience by having him dispatch our spacewalks from the Endeavour flight deck as the intra-vehicular coordinator. Steve is also our expert on bringing Tranquility to life after she's birthed to the space station. Next to Steve is MS3. That's Nick Patrick. Nick was born in North Yorkshire, near London, and was raised there and in Rye, New York. Nick has made multiple trips across the Atlantic while growing up and holds degrees both from Cambridge and MIT. We try to get Nick to say words like issue just because he makes them sound better, but often he'll just snigger at us, which I now realize is his way of keeping us in our place. Nick worked on Boeing airplanes and has a keen sense of the human interaction with vehicles, as well as a slightly different perspective on just about everything, which is great for a crew like ours that is worried about missing something. Nick is our EV2 and will be attaching the ammonia lines to the lab. He will also be moving PMA-3 out to the end of Tranquility and is our shuttle space deployment and retrograde expert. Next to Nick is our MS-4, Lieutenant Colonel Bob Benkin, who is also our EV-1. Bob was born in Creve Coeur outside St. Louis, Missouri, and has degrees from Washington University and Caltech. Bob was an Air Force F-22 engineer before coming to NASA. Bob is our lead spacewalker, and I rely on him very heavily for just about everything that goes on in that area. It's a very serious and complex discipline requiring forethought, but it's also very physically demanding, and Bob is always way ahead of events. He's a great communicator, having built good team relationships among spacewalkers, controllers, and trainers for the mission. He's also good for telling jokes that go way over my head that I get about 5 minutes later. He hasn't had to explain one to me yet, though. Bob will be attaching the ammonia lines to the Tranquility module. We're looking forward to your questions.
Thank you so much, George, for those introductions. We'll start at this side of the room. If you can please state your name and affiliation.
Bill Harwood, CBS. Well, Commander, about the budget. No, I'm just kidding. Really, for any one of you, and it doesn't matter who, this looks like a pretty challenging flight. It's a critical module to get up on board. It really finishes out the U.S. assembly of the station, not counting the PLM, I guess, that'll be added later. But in terms of a complex module, ammonia hookups, electrical data, all that stuff, and then the cupola, which strikes me as a really interesting piece of hardware. If you could just describe maybe the overall challenge of the mission for us, I'd appreciate it.
I'll take that one. Yeah, the mission is challenging, and it's unique in the sense that we are bringing up a node and also outfitting it. So whereas before my previous flight on STS-120, we brought up node 2, attached it in a temporary location, and then did some other tasks. On this one, we're attaching it. We're doing a transplant of all the Eclipse racks into Node 3, which will change the way that the station is laid out. And what is also different about it is that it's shuttle crew that'll be doing that as opposed to purely station crew. We're going to have to go up there and find out how to interact with our station crew members, which have their operating methods well established. They've been up there. They know that station very well. We're going up there. We have currency on the procedures that we'll be using to move those racks, but we haven't worked with the racks the way they have. So in a sense, we're going up there. We'll have to build a team very quickly and learn how to work together to establish Node 3 in its permanent configuration.
But is the baseline plan going in not to move any racks? And then is it looking like you got to have a mission extension day to get the racks in there, or are you thinking you can do it during the nominal mission?
Yeah, well, the baseline up until a week ago was for us to move those on flight day 8. And what we're going to do now is we're going to try to get some processing out of the UPA and get that done, and we're hoping to get those racks moved in onto what would be a new flight day 11. So it's still out there. We're trained for it. We consider ourselves on standby, ready to execute that plan, and we think we're going to get there with the extension day.
Gina Sinceri, ABC News, for Nick Patrick and Bob Behnken. Which spacewalks do you think would be the most challenging for you?
Well, I guess for Nick, maybe I don't want to speak for him, but maybe the first one would be the most challenging because this will be his first opportunity to go out of the hatch and perform a spacewalk. So I would imagine there'll be a lot of new things to see and to be distracted by maybe during that first spacewalk. So that's probably the one he's looking the most forward to and might consider the most challenging. Physically, I think the second spacewalk, where we actually route the ammonia lines and the associated MLI that protects those ammonia lines to keep them warm if we ever did have to shut down one of the loops, will be very physically challenging, and it's very complex. And we're really counting on Steve Robinson to walk us through all the steps and keep us from missing anything as we execute that one. I think that's probably the most challenging one.
I would agree. I think that there's one more challenge for us, which is the third EVA. It's also a very full EVA. And it will be our third one, will be the most tired for that one. So I think we'll have to keep our vigilance up to make sure all three go well.
Other follow-ups? Go ahead.
Hi, Robert Perlman with CollectSpace.com. A question for all of you, since weather permitting, you'll be launching on Super Bowl Sunday. Where do you all fall in terms of rooting for teams? And are you all unanimous for the Saints, the Colts, or who?
I can answer part of that. I grew up in Baltimore, so I grew up with Colts banners and stuff in my bedroom. So I've been a Colts fan, but now my son is a big Saints fan ever since Reggie Bush went there. So we kind of have both sides of the Super Bowl covered in our house.
I like water polo.
I'm hoping my family will be glued to NASA TV on Super Bowl Sunday.
Eric Berger with the Houston Chronicle. It seems unlikely, but in case there is a repair to a heat shield warranted outside the vehicle, would Steve go out and do that repair, or is there a plan for that?
No, we're built on this mission to have two spacewalkers, and that's Nick and Bob, and Steve is our IV, and he's very, very important in that role. And so were something like that to happen, we'd have to do a repair outside. We'd use Steve's experience inside to make sure that Bob and Nick effected great techniques and a good repair on the outside of the vehicle.
All right, Center.
Hi, Greg Dobbs with HDNet Television. Commander, you said that the installation of Tranquility and the cupola will change, your words, change the way astronauts on the station live and work. Would you expand on that?
Oh, sure. Well, it'll make it easier for them, for one thing. Currently, we have a lot of those life support racks spread throughout the station, and they're in the locations where crew members are either doing scientific experiments or exercising or eating or other things, and then the volume in which they're doing all that is very small. Once those racks have been moved into Tranquility, they will be out of the laboratory spaces, so the labs can be for science, and Tranquility will become the home for the water regeneration system and the atmospheric revitalization and those sites, and also exercise. In its final configuration, the A-Red and T2 will be in there. So from that end, that'll be a big change for the astronauts. The other one is just having the cupola on the underside of Tranquility to have direct views for their robotic operations, and also just a great window on the world to be able to look outside. It'll be kind of a hemispheric place where they can look out and see tremendous views of the Earth.
All right. Up here in the front row.
This is Jill Tolk. I'm representing two different entities for the Bay Area Houston Magazine, and also the La Miranda Sun in the East Bay area of San Francisco. A dual question for both Nick and Steve. From a human interest perspective, how is 130 different or similar than your adventures on 114 and 116, respectively, especially considering the timeline with shuttle right now?
They're very different missions. 116 was, among other things, a crew rotation mission. We took Sunny Williams up, and that consumed some of our time. I wasn't doing any of the spacewalks on that mission, so for me personally, this is a very different experience, both in training and in execution. But I think overall they'll be fairly similar in that there'll be a lot of drama in space. We're doing exciting things on both missions. The cupola and Node 3 are probably a little bit more exciting than P5 was, so that should be more fun to watch. But I would say I hope the experience will be just as good on this mission. I think it will.
I'm not letting Nick speak before me anymore. He's too well spoken. My last mission was the return to flight mission, and today's a great day to remember how we got to that state, and it was a very successful mission, but there was a lot unknown. We did an awful lot of things that were brand new. We came up to the station for the first time, did that big flip over so that we could inspect it. And the first time we had the boom and inspected ourselves, and first time we did any kind of repair on the heat shield. And there are many new things that we had a lot of questions about. It was a big resupply mission because nobody had been to the space station for a long time. This one's very different. This is a big construction mission. We're going to go and add not just a new room on the house, but probably the most complex room on the house that, as you've heard us talk, it's going to be a real challenging mission. Space shuttle crews don't normally do this. We normally add on the room and then get sort of outfitted later. So these two guys are going outside to hook it up. The rest of the four of us are inside hooking it up. And so that makes it a very unusual mission in the whole, not just our own, but in the whole string of NASA shuttle missions.
Thanks for that. I have a little bit of a follow-up for you, Steve. Earlier this month, there was a presentation about the Apollo 11 rocks and the Everest rock that was retrieved by your crewmate on STS-95. So here it is, that particular payload, you might say, is going up to be installed into cupola. So what are your thoughts and feelings about that, where it kind of follows along with what you just said about things progressing?
Imagine being in the cupola and looking out this huge series of windows and looking at the moon and having a piece of the moon right next to you. What's that going to be like? I have no idea. I'll come back and tell you. It sounds very exciting to me.
Hi, I'm Rachel Hobson with Make Magazine, and I have a question for Nick and Bob for the spacewalks. You guys are the only spacewalkers on this flight. You're doing all 3 spacewalks, and you've done all kinds of training knowing what technical steps you have to do. What kind of endurance training do you do so that you don't, by the end of that 3rd spacewalk, feel completely wiped out? What kind of things do you do to keep yourself awake?
Both of us spend a fair amount of time at the gym in preparation for this, but the best way to prepare for spacewalks is to do spacewalks, and we have the Neutral Buoyancy Laboratory. That facility provides us an excellent opportunity to understand the level of fatigue that your body's going to see as you go through the spacewalks. And one of the things we've been very careful about as we've designed the training for this mission is to make sure that we had those spacewalks close enough together when we did them in the training laboratory that we would get that same level of fatigue by the time the third run ran around. We'd have that same level of fatigue that we should expect on orbit. And we would learn how our bodies responded to it, and also the way that we needed to react, whether it was to slow down a little bit or to back each other up a little bit more, those sorts of things. So we tried to build the training template to give us 2 or 3 opportunities like that with runs really close together to simulate the on-orbit experience. My experience from my last flight, having done 3 EVAs on the previous mission, was that being able to see that in the NBL really did prepare me well for the time on orbit. And I'll leave it to Nick to see what he's expecting, I guess, here.
I'm imagining from my experience in the NBL that 3 EVAs almost back-to-back with just a day or 2 between each of them is a bit like going to the gym 3 days in a row or 3 days a week and exercising exactly the same muscle groups and maybe exercising them quite a lot. You start out with some aches, and hopefully those don't grow to the point at which your capability is limited. And my experience, and I think it was Bob's too, and from our practice doing this in the NBL, is that these EVAs really are going to be manageable spaced the way they are. I need to say thanks to Steve, because when we were first assigned to this mission we found out I was doing some of these EVAs with Bob, Steve gave me his hand exerciser from STS-130, and I've been carrying that with me in my car. So hopefully we're well prepared. I think we are.
And that's just half of it. I can speak for these guys. These are, even though they went to, MIT and Caltech, they're still really smart guys. It's kind of like going to the gym all day while you're currently, at the same time, in a chess tournament. It's a very, very challenging mental exercise, and to plan ahead every second. And these guys are the best you're going to see. They're really awesome at that, and so.
That's a good point. When I get up the pool, I know my brain is generally more tired than my arms. So.
Okay, next question.
I'm Cici Varela with Univision National News. This is for Commander Samka. You are the only one who has Latino blood in you, and I'm sure all Latinos have great expectations, especially when they see somebody going into space. What could you tell them? What are you bringing with you in this mission? What part of our Latino traditions, education, background are you bringing or taking with you?
Sure. I guess the part of my Latino background that I bring up with me comes from my mother, who was born in Bogota, Colombia. She came to the United States, and her profession was as a cytopathologist, so she was involved in sciences and got me interested in sciences when I was young. And she also gave me the discipline to study hard and persevere when things weren't going my way. So from that aspect, my Latino heritage is what got me through school and got me working hard enough where I could do something like this someday. I've got a lot of cousins that are watching, and I'm hoping I don't let them down. I don't think I will. And we're bringing some special items up, some personal mementos, and also some other items that will come to space and come back with me.
Okay. Next question, I believe, here on the right.
Jim Oberg with NBC News, and good to see you all here. For Kay, as the cupola specialist, you're going to be the first one there to get the views, probably the first one to put your nose on the glass, but you're going to enjoy it. But how are you going to share those views with us on the ground? What kind of TV views do you plan? How much are you going to bring us along vicariously with the views that you expect to get?
Right. Well, when we very first go in there, obviously the shutters will be closed on the windows, so we won't actually be able to see out. And we have a lot of equipment we have to rearrange inside the cupola. Actually, when we very first install Node 3, the cupola is on the port end, and we'll be moving it a couple of days later to the nadir, or the bottom, if you will, of the space station, so that the largest window, the cupola, will face down towards the Earth. That's the axial window, number 7, and then we'll have 6 windows that are around the radius of the cupola to be able to look out in those other angle views. So it's actually later in the mission that we'll eventually get to the point where we can open the shutters. Our spacewalkers will be releasing some launch restraint bolts that are on holding the shutters closed because of the vibrations that we see during launch. And we're done with those by the time we've got it installed on spacewalk EVA number 3. They'll be removing those bolts, and we'll be able to test and operate the shutters and see our first views. We will definitely be bringing along some still cameras as well as video cameras to try to capture those views as best we can to share with you. But I can guarantee you we can provide high-definition pictures, but it's still never like the real thing of actually being there and having the full expanse spread out in front of us. So we'll try to share it as best we can and let you see the views as soon as we can.
And for Terry, as the rookie on the flight, you'll be using that window too, I'm sure, and to look for things. What kind of advice have all the veteran crew members been giving you? And how much of that advice do you think was useful to you? How much are you going to follow?
Right. That's the challenge, is finding out what they were telling me was true and what wasn't true. But they've been great. I've gotten a lot of good words. I think Steve probably gave me the best advice, and he said, in your first day in space, you learn more than, it's like learning your entire lifetime of experiences, learning how to walk and move and just really daily things that you take for granted. Here on Earth, you can take a bottle of water and you set it there and you don't think about it. But in space, you have to think about are you going to use Velcro, or are you going to have a tether, or are you just going to let it float for a second before you have to grab it again? And when you push off the wall, you don't want to push too hard because then you'll go flying and you'll bonk your head. So really little basic things that we all learned when we were 1 year old, you have to learn. And everybody says that you learn it very quickly in the first few days. So I think that's going to be a lot of fun. Learning how to exist in outer space is going to be very cool.
One last question. Some of you may say yes, but I don't think most of you will. You're trading on this flight. You're focused on it, and without any questions about budget or futures. How many of you expect this to be your last flight to space?
No.
I'm glad to see no hands. I'm glad to see no hands.
Yeah.
Next question.
And this for Kay. I'm Marianne Dyson with National Space Society. You're a role model for young women, and I wonder if you have some advice for those women who would like to become shuttle arm operators or station arm operators someday. Are there some computer games they might want to play?
Well,
if you could comment.
I've had so many opportunities. I feel very fortunate, first of all, to be a part of this mission. It's just fantastic with not only the great crew that you see sitting up here, but all the people that are supporting us as NASA and as our contractors all across the country, not only here at the Johnson Space Center, the Kennedy Space Center, Marshall Space Center. It's just such a tremendous team, and to be able to be a part of this, working towards this challenging mission, it's very exciting. And this opportunity, I could not have predicted years ago. So the advice that I might give is be ready for opportunities that you can't even forecast. And the way to be ready is to start early, studying the math and science, making sure that you get a good educational background that can take you in whatever direction may come available to you later on.
Okay, with that, we're going to switch over to Kennedy Space Center and take questions from media there.
Hello, this is Marcia Dunn of the Associated Press. This is the last big construction mission, the last major piece to be assembled, and I'm wondering, as you're leaving, once your work is completed, do you anticipate a sense of sadness about this all, that the shuttle program is winding down and its job is just about done?
Marcia, trying to decide now, how are we going to answer this? You know what? I've been with NASA for a long time. I started working for NASA when we were still designing the space shuttle. And I think when we pull away from the space station and look at that amazing structure that human beings have put together, and you think about the audacity and the confidence that it takes to do something that crazy and successfully have put it together, I think our feeling is going to be of pride, a feeling of generations of engineers and hardworking people having done a job very, very well, and most importantly, opened up a laboratory to discover things we just don't yet know. How could you feel anything but thrilled and very proud to have done something like that? So I think that's probably more like how we'll feel.
Thank you. And I wonder what the protocol is for who and how many can be inside the cupola when the shutters are open. Do you all plan to squish in as many as possible, or how do you think that'll all play out? Who gets to have ringside seats?
There's not actually a rule on how many people we can have in there once Node 3 is up and working. It's going to take a few days to get the module activated, to have the air fans and filters working. Until that time, we will have restrictions. But after 2 or 3 days, when it's all hooked up and running, I think it's going to be up to us to make sure that we're safe and that we have a reasonable number of people in there. And I know that a lot of folks are going to want to go down there and look out the window.
Todd Halverson of Florida Today. I think a couple of you are graduates of Florida Institute of Technology, and I'm wondering if whomever has a degree from FIT could talk about when and why they went there and what the experience was like.
I can start with that one. I actually started at Florida Institute Institute of Technology right after I left full-time active duty with the Navy. I started working on my master's degree before I actually started working at the Kennedy Space Center, and somewhere in the middle of my first quarter studying at Florida Institute of Technology, I got hired on at the Kennedy Space Center and was able to accomplish both at the same time. I was going to school at night and working at Kennedy Space Center on the space shuttle as an engineer. And I went there because they had a great program in focusing on space technology. And at that time, it was hard to find that type of degree. So it worked out very well for me. It was a very good experience.
Todd, for me, it was going to the satellite campus that was at Patuxent River Naval Air Station, and a lot of my professors were some of the engineers that I saw around the facility there, and so that made learning particularly enjoyable, having some of the harder concepts explained by people that I knew so well. So it was a great place to learn for me.
Thanks. And Kay, of course, is the first former Kennedy Space Center worker to be selected as an astronaut and fly in space. And I'm wondering if Zambo or others could tell me, describe her personality for me and what she's like to work with.
I think I'll let Bob do that one.
Actually, you know, as part of the EVA crew, our training is actually quite a bit different than the folks who are focusing more on the flight deck. And I know that Steve has been the person who's kind of cross-pollinated between those two sides of our activities. So we don't spend a lot of time with Kay throughout the training flow for this mission. But I think both Nick and I, you know, look to Kay as that person who always has that extra bit of information, someplace either buried in her head or buried in a piece of paper that she's got in her crew notebook, just ready to pull it out and give us that little extra bit of information so that we'll be ready to do our jobs even better. And so we've had her out at the NBL a couple of times, and she's taken an active interest in the activities that we've done out there, even though that isn't her primary responsibility on the mission, and we appreciate that as well. So those two things, I think, are probably the characteristics of Kay that I think are most shining and make her a great crew member for us to work with.
You notice, Todd, that there's only 6 people on this crew, not the normal 7. That's because Kay's on it. We didn't need 7. And I'm not making this up.
That's great. And Kay, I'm just going to put you on the spot, and you're going to probably hate me for it, but let's go ahead. Why don't you tell me your favorite Kennedy Space Center anecdote, your favorite funny story about working at Kennedy Space Center?
Wow, okay, I'm going to have to get back to you on that one. I don't have one that just pops into my head. I will share, though, when I very first hired on at the Kennedy Space Center, the first launch I was able to watch in the spring of 1989. I remember we were actually working that day, so we walked outside of our office building to watch the final part of the launch countdown and watch the vehicle lift off the pad. And when it first lifted off the pad, I was kind of cheering, and I looked around, and I was the only employee that was actually cheering, because every other employee out there holds their breath. And not just till the solids come off. Actually, they wait until the solids come off, and then they breathe. But they don't cheer then either. They wait all the way until main engine cutoff, or MECO. And that's when the actual employees cheer. So I thought that was kind of unusual. And if you watch folks that are attending launches, their first launch, most outside folks that don't work in the program will do that. They'll cheer as soon as it lifts off. So I learned the protocol, if you will, from that very first launch.
I have an anecdote about Kay, too. I think we all do. Kay and I have probably spent the most time together on the crew. We went to Canada about a year and a half ago for ARM training, and we're doing all the ARM operations together, and then we're doing a lot of the internal outfitting together. So we've done a lot of training together. And what Bob said is we'll be in a sim, and someone will say, hey, what are we doing next Wednesday? And then this schedule pops out, and Kay's got the schedule for next Wednesday. Or what happens when this electrical bus breaks? And then Kay brings it out, and she has the information. But the other thing about Kay, and you're talking about KSC, is the NASA Space Center there in Florida where we launch from. And we jokingly call it K's Space Center because it's every time we go there, and there's tens of thousands of people who work there, everybody knows Kay, and they all run up and give her a hug. So I think that's what KSC stands for.
Okay, with that wraps up our questions from Kennedy Space Center. We'll now switch over to headquarters to take questions.
Thank you. This is Tarek Malik with Space.com. I've got a few questions. My first actually is also for Kay. Kay, you have the unique, I guess, opportunity on this mission. You're a veteran space flyer, but you're headed for the space station now. I'm just kind of curious what your thoughts are. I guess having that orbiter-only flight, knowing that there's this vast football field-sized vehicle that you're going to now.
Oh, thanks. That's a great question because that is something I'm definitely looking forward to. My first flight was with a space lab, NeuroLab on STS-130, and that was a fantastic mission. We had 26 primary experiments, and we had this lab up and running, just conducting just incredible science on orbit. But to go up to the International Space Station, where we have this tremendous facility that's so much larger and has so many greater capabilities, and the ongoing science that's going on there, and the future science that will occur there, it's just a tremendous exciting thing to be able to see that and to be a part of that and to know that we have that available to the international science community.
Thanks. And for Terry Virts, as the first-time space flyer in the crew, you mentioned earlier what you're looking forward to for experiencing, I guess, life in space. But I'm wondering if there's one task or moment that you've got maybe your name labeled on. That's a Terry Virts moment. If it's just getting into space the first time or adding a 40,000-pound room to the station with a robotic arm. If you can give me an idea of that, thanks.
My crewmates are all giving me ideas, things like putting the landing gear down at the end of the mission. That's going to be an important task that I have. But there's going to be so many things on this flight. I told my wife when I got assigned to the flight that if I had to pick one flight to get assigned to, this would be it, because of the crew that we have and because of the modules that we're bringing up. I mean, it's rare to bring up one module, and we get to bring up two and activate them both. But I think the one thing that I'm really looking forward to, and I know all my crewmates are also, is getting a chance to look out of the cupola with the 7 windows and the view that we're going to get there. Every view that I get will be my first, and it'll be great, but I think that's going to be really special to see that view of the Earth and of space, and hopefully get some good pictures of maybe sunrises and sunsets, that kind of thing, out of the cupola. That's going to be fun.
Thanks, and my last question, I think, is for you, Commander Zemka. This is the last planned night launch of the shuttle, with just 5 more left on the docket, and I'm just wondering what you're hoping folks that come out to see it are going to get a chance to see. Thanks.
Oh wow, well, Tariq, for me, I'm kind of happy it's a night launch and a night landing. I started out my flying career in the Marines flying A6s, which was a nighttime kind of airplane. So I've got some friends back from those days that'll watch the launch and share that excitement with me. It should be spectacular. It'll be dark all around, and I think from the one launch that I've seen, there'll be a sequence of first very bright light from the solids lighting, and then sometime later there'll be the rumble as the sound finally reaches the crowds that are there, and it's going to light up the ground around them, and then it'll climb up into the sky. You should be able to see it, I think, as far as the Carolinas, if the sky allows it. So it should be a wonderful sight.
Okay, that's our last question from headquarters. We'll return here to the Johnson Space Center for follow-ups. Jill?
Jill Tolk, representing Bay Area Houston Magazine, with the question for Nick. You enjoy private flying very much, and it's been part of your work history before you came to NASA. If you want, please describe and wax poetically about your experience that you're going to have out there after you open the hatch, just you, your suit, and plexiglass.
I'll try and wax and not wane, Jill. I think the EMU that Bob and I have been training to fly essentially for this mission, and that Steve has experience flying, is really like a little spacecraft. It's got its own life support system, its engine, if you will. Its engines are really our arms, but when you're out there, you have the responsibility of being the pilot of your own spacecraft just for a few minutes, a few hours. And I hope that my private flying experience has helped get me to the point where I'm ready for that challenge. The military folks in our crew have a really long and great history of flying. They get here through test pilot school and all sorts of things. Those of us who are civilians have to kind of get that experience on our own. And it's a very important experience if you want to come here and be an operator, as Steve knows, because he's also a big private pilot. I think it's invaluable for us. It helps bridge the gap between being academic or even working engineers and being operational people ready to handle something like the flight deck of a space shuttle or an EMU.
Okay, next question.
Greg Dobbs with HDNet Television. And Steve already preempted the question about a crew of 6 versus 7, and your answer for why there's a crew of 6 is K. But is there any other part of the answer to a crew of 6 versus 7?
I think there's an official line that, I mean, that was the truth, but George will give you the official line. How'd you like that?
Thank you. Hey, you did that very well. Thank you for the toss, Steve. What it comes down to these days is getting supplies and equipment up to the space station. And we are, when we launch on February 7th, we're going to be packed to the gills with replacement parts that are needed up on the space station, as well as supplies to take care of our crew member friends that are up there. And the mission that we have can be done with 6. It's going to be very tight, and we're going to be missing some things that we normally do have with 7, an extra set of hands to help kind of fill in areas where we didn't have enough people to do the tasks. We lose a little bit of flexibility, and we're going to be a little bit stretched on our timeline, but we'll be able to do it. We've figured all that out, and I think we're going to do just fine. Once we get up to the space station, we join a much bigger team, and with that bigger team, we'll be able to adapt to the fact that we've only got 6.
May I ask a follow-up? Is it as simple then as saying that you acquire additional cubic volume inside the crew quarters that are not occupied by the gear and the physical presence of a 7th crew?
Well, every crew member requires a certain amount of supplies and a certain amount of life support, and I think the number is roughly, I will say, 1,000 pounds. I have a finer number, but I'd be more wrong than helping by estimating any further than that. But that 1,000 pounds is very valuable to the space station. For instance, the Cedra bed that we're taking up there is probably on the order of about that weight. And some of the other items that we're taking up there are crucial to the space station. And that's where things are coming down these days as the space shuttle program is kind of coming toward its end.
This is Jill Tolk with Bay Area Houston Magazine. Question for Terry and Bob. I believe the two of you were classmates at Edwards at the test pilot school, so there's obviously some familiarity there. Do you have any jokes or anecdotes that you want to share or could share, or just do you want to comment on the experience of being able to fly together on orbit?
I'll start off. I'll let Bob finish. We were classmates in 1998. We went to Edwards Air Force Base together, and I was fortunate enough I got to sit next to Bob through test pilot school, so he helped me make it through, graduate, and it's very cool. It's a lot of fun to get to fly with him. A lot of our classmates are going to be there from our test pilot school class, and so there's been a lot of excitement among the common friends that we have from that background. And I'm sure there's a lot of stories. I'm not sure that we want to share very many of them. I'll let Bob see if he can think of one.
Well, I do know that, I can also confirm that Terry Virts and I attended 98 Bravo at the Air Force Test Pilot School out at Edwards Air Force Base. We had a great time together, and as Terry mentioned, I think we both leaned on each other throughout the year. We did sit next to each other. I sat next to Terry right after the birth of his first child, and I watched him struggle with sleepless nights, I think, and coming into school the next day, and we worked together to kind of make sure we were both ready for any of the events that turned up while we were out there. We did do our, I can't remember which check ride it was, but we flew a C-130 together with Terry as the pilot and me as the test conductor, directing him what to do, and I remember that experience really fondly, and that's probably the first opportunity, other than sitting next to each other, that I actually had a chance to work operationally with Terry. And I haven't had much of an opportunity to do that here in Houston until we got assigned together on this mission. And I'm really thankful for the opportunity for it to come full circle and have that opportunity to do work with Terry again. So.
Okay, any remaining follow-ups here at JSC? Okay, with that will conclude our briefing. Coming up next on NASA TV will be the NASA video file. Thank you.